Well, hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm just going to do a couple of videos. This is the first one, and this is about switching over from petrol and diesel to electric. The reason for that is I'm just over 18 months of ownership, done 28,000 miles. It's not something I've talked about on the channel before, and I just thought I would let you all know what I think of the swap over between driving a diesel SUV and replacing that with this electric car. It's not specific about this Audi e-tron. I'm just going to try and keep things as generic as possible. So first up, electric cars normally cost a bit more, but for me, I was able to get this car on a salary sacrifice lease. So it's a company car. My salary's been reduced a little bit because I now get a salary and a company car instead of just salary. But the nice thing is I'm not paying income tax and national insurance on the price of that lease. So although the lease company kind of cranks up the price a little bit when they add in the insurance and the maintenance and all the other things that I get, it has actually worked out quite well for me. It's a bit cheaper than me going out sourcing a car on the open market. So price wise, this isn't costing me any more, but what I've got is a slightly more luxurious car. On the subject of the car, well, driving an electric car, I've got to say I prefer to drive an electric car than to drive a petrol or diesel. My last diesel was a 6-speed automatic, the one before that was a manual. I've got to say electric is just nicer to drive. It's smoother, it's quieter, you get less vibration, and the power is just kind of instant. This isn't the fastest, kind of snappiest response. Something like a Tesla or a Taycan is way quicker, but nevertheless, this is a very, very fast and powerful car. But it's that instant response, it's that linear power that I absolutely love. If you do want to go quick, yeah, all you've got to do is squeeze your foot down. Don't think about gears, don't think about kick down, anything like that. This thing goes like an absolute rocket, and that is true of most electric cars. They are much quicker than the kind of petrol and diesel engine equivalents. So performance wise, absolutely prefer electric. And the smoothness and the quietness, I mean, it's just nicer. I thought I was really going to miss that kind of sound of revving the engines, that kind of interaction and changing gear, all that kind of thing. As much as I do enjoy driving my wife's hatchback, it's really nice to get back in this and just go back to electric. It's just a nicer experience as a driver. Of course, electric cars need charging up. I'm used to having motorbikes with range of kind of 170, 200 miles. Stopping at petrol stations, no big deal. No one ever asks about the range of a motorbike, but everyone wants to know the range of your car. Well, I've picked a car that has enough range on it, being fairly conservative, to do what I do regularly, and that is commute between Dorset and Heathrow Airport. So it's a 170-mile round trip, something I do on a regular basis. I picked a car that the WLTP is 250. My own road test in the winter is 207 motorway miles. In the summer, it's more like 220. It comfortably does that journey, and therefore I don't use public charging very much. I have a home charger. I would strongly recommend that if you're looking at an electric car and you're considering that option, do ask yourself where you're going to charge it, because you need to be able to charge it as part of your normal routine. So for me, that's when I park the car at night. I can plug it in, and I plug it in a couple of times a week, particularly the night before I do that long commute and the night after, just so that I always set out with plenty of battery and always get back, and then I top it up again. The rest of the time, I let the battery run down a bit, plug it in when it suits me. That's not every day. So having charging as part of your normal routine, I think is quite important for electric. Now, if you don't have a driveway, you don't have access to a 7 kilowatt charger on your drive, maybe they've got charging at your workplace, maybe the supermarket that you use and you're 45 minutes going around the shops doing your big shop every week, maybe they've got a 50 kilowatt charger. Depends how many miles you do, depends what kind of usage you do, but if you can fit charging into something that you already do, I think the switch to electric would probably work for you. if you are going to be reliant on other public chargers and you've got to do something special to go and use them, then it might not work out quite so well. So I would say charging up is absolutely easy if you've got regular access to a charger. So whether that's at the office, whether that's at home, then it works really nicely. If you're reliant on public chargers of supermarkets and gyms as part of your normal weekly routine, that's still okay. But if you don't have any access to a charger like that, and you've got to go and make a special journey or go and stop somewhere that you don't normally stop at to go and use the charger, then I think that you'll find it a little bit of a pain at the moment, and you might be better off just sticking with a normal car or a hybrid or something, just to kind of fit in with your weekly routine. Public charging in the UK, well, my first long trip in this, so the work commute was working out okay, but then I'd only had this a month or two and I had to go up to the NEC in Birmingham. That was a longer trip. So a couple of top tips. The car manufacturer has an app, so I've got the My Audi app. That's got a navigation part on it, and that will plan charges for you, and the built-in sat-nav will plan charges for you. If I tell it where I'm going, it knows if I'm going to get there on one charge or not, and it will suggest charging stops if it thinks I need them. So it's actually really easy to find chargers. There are apps like a Better Route Planner, and that is absolutely brilliant for journey planning. And again, that will give you a really good idea of places where you can stop and charge on a long trip. Now, it's actually turned out, I thought I would be public charging fairly regularly, but it turns out that I don't. It's unusual for me to go much further than the range of 100% charge on this. So public charging isn't something that I've had to do very much. So my experience of public charging in the UK is a bit of a mixed bag. I've always been able to charge up and it's always worked. But sometimes I've had to queue somewhere like Beaconsfield Services. Sometimes I've had to queue because one or two of the chargers weren't working and there was only one available. And sometimes I've had to move on to a different charging site because the chargers weren't working and I've had to come up with a different plan. But I've never got to the point where I was worried about running out of battery. It's actually always worked out okay. Now, a lot of the chargers in the UK, they are 50 kilowatt DC chargers. That's going to be fine if you're going to drive something with a small battery, something like a Mini, Fiat 500, Corsa, the Peugeot, Citroen group, Stellantis cars with the 50 kilowatt batteries. You can fill those up in an hour of charging. You can carry on with the journey, that'll work out fine. This thing's got a 95 kilowatt hour battery. It's quite thirsty. It needs a lot of kilowatt hours being put back into the battery on a long run. So the availability of the 150 kilowatt chargers to make the most of this thing's charging speed is a bit less good. Sometimes I found that I can find a charger, I think it's going to be a 120 or a 150, and it actually turns out it isn't. So when you get there, it's only a 60. So again, it's worth checking on a Better Route Planner or Zap Map or something. If you're going to plan a route, just kind of come up with your kind of plan in advance. Pick yourself a fast charger. Pick somewhere where there are 4 chargers or more, one of these kind of hubs. And long journeys are easy. And as you'll see from other trips on the channel, some of the other videos, I've taken this thing down to the Alps. The French infrastructure is better in terms of motorway services and rapid charging hubs where there are 6 or 8 very fast chargers, and it's an easy thing to do a long journey. Actually, on a long journey, I'd rather take the electric than the diesel SUV, just because it's smoother and it's quieter and it's less fatiguing. And of course, much as I might think that I can drive for 4 hours perfectly safely, it isn't always a good idea to. It's really wise to stop every 2.5 hours or so, and even if it's just a short break. So stopping to use a public charger, in a lot of ways, that's kind of a really positive thing, and you have to look at it that way rather than as an inconvenience. So yeah, a diesel or petrol for a long trip is more convenient. You can stop when you want to stop. Refueling is easy, but with electric, you just need to put a little bit of thought into it, and it's almost as easy. It's absolutely fine fine to do. So no regrets at all about swapping over to electric and doing long journeys. Now, there's a couple of things about electric cars that I really like. One is that I've got this preconditioning. So I get a phone app that connects to the car. Most electric cars are quite smart. You can read the battery state. You can set timers for charging the thing. And one of them is I've got access to the climate control on this. So before I set out on a journey on a very hot day, I can put the air conditioning on, cool the car down, and in 10 minutes I've got a nice cool car. In the winter I can set a departure time. If I know I'm setting out at 6 in the morning and it's going to be frosty, I can program the timer on this to heat the car up to be ready at 6 in the morning. And at 6 in the morning, when there's ice all over my wife's car, this thing is sat on the drive, nice and warm on the inside, and all the ice on the windscreen has defrosted. So I do really like that preconditioning function. Way better to do that when you're plugged in, because it does use a bit of battery. But even if you're not plugged in at home, it's still a really nice function to have. Now finally, the running costs. Electric cars are just cheaper to use. Even at kind of domestic prices, right now we're at 34p a kilowatt hour. I think it's been announced most areas are going to come down to about 31p a kilowatt hour. You need an incredibly efficient kind of hybrid car to get anywhere near the fuel economy to give you the same running cost as an equivalent electric car. The running costs on this are very, very low. Partly because I get cheap electricity overnight for charging. It means I pay a bit more in the day, but we've got solar during the day, so that offsets that. So for most people, you can, well, for everybody, if you go to OVO Charge Anytime because your charger or your car is compatible with that electricity tariff, you're charging at only 10p a kilowatt hour, and then you're just paying standard prices for all your household consumption. So that makes the running costs of your electric car incredibly cheap. I can charge this thing up, and run around. It's costing me just a few pence per mile. This thing is so cheap to use that it's worked out really well. Anyway, pop anything in the comments. I will answer questions. So I am really pleased, in summary, of swapping over to an electric car. I definitely prefer this to petrol or diesel. The experience has been really positive. Long journeys are still possible. They just need a little bit of planning, a little bit of kind of pick your chargers. Range anxiety is no longer a factor for me. I've learned to trust the kind of guessometer, the range remaining on the instruments. I can look at the battery percentage. I kind of know I'm going to make it. It all works really well for me. So I've got to say, electric is a really good thing. And, the lack of tailpipe emissions, that's probably very good for our cities and towns, and air quality. Environmentally, I know there's a bit of a debate, but I think the consensus kind of sits with the fact that electric cars are better for the environment when they've done enough miles, because the impact on the environment building them is that bit greater. So if you do a lot of miles in your electric car, then environmentally it's a positive thing. So yeah, would I go back to petrol diesel, or would I buy another electric? Well, I want to stick with electric. I just prefer it to drive. It's cheap to run, it's more comfortable, it's more enjoyable, and the charging and the public charging, I do far less of it than I thought I ever would, because every day I can get in my car, I've got 80% of battery, and I've got between 170 and 200 miles of range, depending on the time of year and the nature of the drive. So it's worked out really positive for me. So hope you found this informative. Pop anything in the comments box and I will answer any questions. Thanks for liking and subscribing this video. I'll see you again soon for the next one.